Want to know my first thoughts after reading the article? There is not enough alcohol in the world. Grossi Posse Packer Nation, welcome to an episode of Podcast, the podcast where you're not to be a Packers fan. But it sure does help. I am your host, Tom Grossi. Thank you so much for watching. What? That should be the title of this episode. What? What the hell is happening? What is going on? Why am I up at 8:30 at night after just recording and editing the video for tomorrow, still talking about Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers? Why am I doing it? This is the last time I'm going to talk about this. Before we get to that, if you want to throw money at me and watch me dance like a monkey, a big shout out and thank you to all my patrons over at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy. Check that out for some cool rewards. Thank you very much for the support. Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, first, I've included it in the description below. There is an article that came out today detailing the 13-year relationship between Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers. Written by Tyler Dunne of Bleacher Report. It is an incredibly well done, thoroughly researched, and well written article. So, this whole episode, there's going to be no bashing of Tyler Dunne or anything like that. And while we do live in an age where media is, especially sports media, as I have found out over the years of doing this show, is consistently and constantly doing things for clicks and for clickbait. This, I have to say, was one of the best kind of thoroughly researched articles I have read in a long, long time, and really put together a lot of old information that we had and inserted some new information and kind of tried to put it all together in a cohesive narrative, which I think was done very well. So I highly recommend, before you watch this video, to check out that article. It is in the link in the description. I think you'll get a lot out of it, and it'll also make this a whole lot easier. Okay, so this article really dove into the issues between Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers. And if you're a Packers fan and or have had a pulse and follow the NFL in any capacity for the past 13 years, you will have most likely at least heard one article, one radio show host, one blogger, one idiot with a podcast talk about the strained relationship between Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy. I'm pretty sure at least one point or another, I have talked about that in some capacity on this show. Whether it's talking about the problems that Mike McCarthy is as a coach, or even criticizing Aaron Rodgers and how he is potentially handling things. Because again, we're not in the room, but that's neither here nor there. And the first thing I want to address, because I feel like this is one of the big points about it, is two of the sources that are constantly named in this article are former Packers tight end Jermichael Finley and former Packers wide receiver Greg Jennings. And I know, especially if you've never read the article, you're gonna think, oh my God, Greg Jennings goes on every talk show imaginable to bash the Packers and to bash Aaron Rodgers. Jermichael Finley has been very outspoken bashing Aaron Rodgers and bashing the Packers in the past. And you are 100% correct. However, and this is a big but, I don't think you can completely toss aside either one, this entire article. I think that would be short-sighted. And two, I truly believe, and this may be ignorant on my part, that what these guys are saying is their truth. And I'm not saying it's the truth, but I'm thinking it's theirs. So, for example, when Greg Jennings talks about how Aaron Rodgers hurt his feelings when he was playing against the 49ers and said that you guys should pick him up this next year, I don't doubt that that really pissed off and made Greg Jennings very upset. Now, was Aaron Rodgers being serious? Was he saying it in a joking manner? At that point, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter because Greg Jennings, he took it one way. It obviously wasn't resolved between him and his quarterback, and so he has had this huge chip on his shoulder. He did when he went to go play for Green Bay, and basically in every media appearance afterwards. So Greg Jennings, and according to him, rightfully so, has a big problem with Aaron Rodgers. He says that Aaron Rodgers is too sensitive, that he shuts out wide receivers. And again, I think that is his truth, and I think there is at least some truth in those statements as well. And we'll get to that. Jermichael Finley says that he is entitled and says that he is a bad leader. Again, I'm not saying it's the truth, but I think according to Jermichael Finley, it's his truth. So, let's talk about this. First of all, when we have guys like Randall Cobb or Jordy Nelson or Clay Matthews or any of like our John Kuhn, who we'll talk about him in a second, speak out, or Ryan Grant even, and speak out and say like, hey, like, you know, Aaron Rodgers is a good guy. He's a great guy. We have an amazing relationship. We can't, and Cheesehead TV mentioned this as well, and shout out to them, this idea of we can't just take one source because it resonates within our echo chamber. We can't just say, oh, this guy likes Aaron Rodgers, so I like him. This guy doesn't like Aaron Rodgers, so I don't like him. His opinion is garbage. And we constantly do this over and over again. Jermichael Finley and Greg Jennings are biased as hell. Biased as hell. And we are biased as hell. Because what I imagine a lot of fans to be, and I'm throwing myself into this pile as well, we're like the offensive linemen, right? In that when someone takes a cheap shot at our quarterback especially, because that's who this is basically about, we defend him, right? We run up and we say, no, you're wrong, right? This is our guy. We protect him. This is our team. We protect the legacy, the influence, and the tradition that is the Green Bay Packers. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. But what I am saying, I think it's very ignorant and, again, misleading to say, okay, because these two have bad beef with the Green Bay Packers and with Aaron Rodgers and have gone out in public and have bashed them, to just throw everything they say aside. Because, again, I think there is some monicule of truth in there. Now, speaking to one of the points, for example, with Greg Jennings saying that they shut out receivers, he specifically mentioned Jeff Janis, right? That Jeff Janis got into the doghouse, never recovered, obviously wound up getting cut, went to play for the Browns for a bit, got cut from them too. So while I completely understand what Greg Jennings is saying, I think I almost have to agree with him, but I don't think it's because of Aaron Rodgers. I just don't think Jeff Janis was a great football player. I think it just comes down to that. The guy couldn't run a route. He had really good speed. And if I'm Aaron Rodgers, I'm pissed off at him too that he isn't playing the way that Aaron Rodgers would expect him to. And if we want to look at the other side of that, look at Davante Adams. Davante Adams sucked. He sucked hard. Like real bad. His first year, he dropped everything. Everything. And now he's their number one receiver. Right? Aaron Rodgers was very vocal and supportive of him. And look, so you can get out of the doghouse. So I don't think it's a matter of, well, does Aaron Rodgers, does he freeze out receivers and does he put them in the doghouse? I completely understand that as a competitive human being, that if teammates aren't playing up to the potential that you need them to play up to as the leader of this football team, that you get pissed off at those wide receivers. He even came out and said that the rookie wide receivers from this year were not working hard enough, which is why you would see MVS, EQ, Jamon Moore, any one of those guys, their productivity tanked. Because if you don't trust them, then you're not going to throw them. And that's why Devontae Adams gets the ball thrown at him all the time. And that's why I think Geronimo Allison got a bunch of looks as well and targets in the beginning of the year before he got hurt. So, the whole Greg Jennings thing and Jermichael Finley thing, like Greg Jennings saying that like as a member of the media, he went out and tried to talk to Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Rodgers was ignoring him. And so Greg Jennings talked to McCarthy and talked to all these other people and never heard back from Rodgers and trying to mend the relationship. Who cares? Like, who cares? Obviously, Greg Jennings is upset. He doesn't like the way that things went with Aaron Rodgers. Great. Move on. Everybody should move on. I don't care. I don't think that this is a good look for Greg Jennings. I don't think this is a good look for Aaron Rodgers. But at the end of the day, I really don't care if they get along. I gotta be completely honest. So that's that. Now, let's go into Aaron Rodgers and what was said about him in this article. So, first of all, and this is something that we have heard about constantly, that he changed a lot of Mike McCarthy's calls at the line, right? And even a lot he's switching out of runs. So Mike McCarthy, we'll get to his play calling in a whole nine in a bit. But when it comes to Aaron Rodgers, as the leader of this football team, as the best player on the football team, he didn't agree with a lot of the play calling, so he would constantly switch out of that. For example, one of the things that is constantly being highlighted, and Aaron Nagler retweeted this as well, is that he told EQ to run a deep post, right, instead of the design play call that Mike McCarthy had called for him. And so EQ, not wanting to be frozen out by Aaron Rodgers, decided to listen to him. It was an incomplete pass because Rodgers was pressured. He then went to the sideline and got a talking to of, why didn't you do this, blah, 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 listen to the play calling, and putting him in a precarious position. Aaron Rodgers, obviously, over the past 2 years, has been frustrated, whether it's cursing out Mike McCarthy that you could pick up on the sidelines. He's obviously super duper competitive, and I would probably argue that this article hit the nail right on the head. I wouldn't doubt if he lost his respect for Mike McCarthy. Now, whether or not that is right or something that a leader of a football team should do, at the moment, is neither here nor there. The fact is, my opinion is, I think it happened. I think it happened in the plays. I think it happened in the fact that he was changing all of the play calls. I don't think that the confidence in the coach was there. And as we have talked about on so many occasions on this show, Aaron Rodgers has become the Green Bay Packers, whether you want to admit it or not. The success of this football team is solely and completely reliant on him, which is why when he doesn't play, or he's not at 100%, or he's not on the same page as everybody else, the Packers suck. This shouldn't be shocking news for anybody. 2016, run the table, that was Aaron Rodgers. That was Aaron Rodgers literally putting the team on his back and bringing us to the NFC Championship game. That's what it was. And that's not putting down any of the other players. It's not putting down any of the defensive players or any of the guys who helped him do that. But Aaron Rodgers was literally Superman in 2016. He was. And so, when he's not Superman, the Packers suck. Because, as I even brought up with Mark Murphy, he had zero support. The guy does not have a football team around him. They mentioned this in the article of the fact of this bleeding of talent and how the defense was constantly rejected by McCarthy and wasn't paid attention to. I believe it because as you can look, the defense hasn't been paid attention to. Just now, and literally at the free agency a month ago, have we started actually plugging the holes because we've needed a pass rusher since I've been born. So all of those things in consideration, right? The guy feels like he has to be Superman to do well because that's how it's been. And I'm not justifying his actions. I'm telling you the reality of the situation. He has this huge chip on his shoulder from the draft, and there was talking about McCarthy, that he was the offensive coordinator in San Francisco, and he picked Alex Smith, and Rodgers was freaking pissed off about that. I don't know. And if that is true, Aaron Rodgers, that's petty as shit. That's really, really petty. And again, If that makes him play better, great. He obviously won a Super Bowl with McCarthy. He went 15-1 and put up 2 MVP seasons with McCarthy. So if it worked, cool. Use whatever motivation you need to do. I really don't care. But on top of all of that, there's one quote that Ryan Grant made that I think encompasses everything that we're talking about here. He said, "Think of mankind's never-ending debate over artificial intelligence," Grant says. "When you put a quarterback in a position and you talk about how cerebral he is and you give him flexibility to make some changes, guess what? You develop AI because it has the capacity to run without you. And then when it runs without you, it's like, wait a minute, but in the same breath, if you're not actually able to stay ahead of it, it's going to outthink you and it's going to say, me making the decision is the better decision." And Grant adds, "You live and die by his greatness." The Green Bay Packers would not have gone to that many consecutive playoff games without Aaron Rodgers. That is a fact. If you need any evidence, look at 2017. Look at, besides Matt Flynn like making these amazing comebacks, right? Parts of 2013 and Rodgers coming back and being able to win against the Bears. Yay. So I can see that Aaron Rodgers is a very competitive person. It seems that he could also be a very petty person. But at the end of the day, unless he is literally tarnishing the Green Bay Packers and sabotaging them, which I don't think he is doing, that doesn't benefit anybody. I don't think he's quitting on the team because he got paid a lot of money, like Jermichael Finley would suggest. And I want to point out one other thing real quick. Throughout this article, there's a bunch of sources that are talking about his family and the family dynamic between Aaron Rodgers and the rest of his family. I want to be really clear. I'm never going to talk about that on this show because I quite frankly don't care. And I think that it's disrespectful to Aaron Rodgers. I think it's disrespectful to his family. His brother, who was on The Bachelor, is airing out their dirty laundry and their personal issues all over Twitter. Like, that for me is beyond a football game. And quite frankly, that's none of my business. So there was a lot of equating, if he's able to shut out his family, it makes sense that he's shutting out receivers, or if he doesn't have respect for his family, he doesn't have respect for his coach. I think that's a bunch of BS. I think that you are not in that family dynamic, you are not in that situation, and you're never going to be, and you should mind your own damn business when it comes to him and his own family. So that's my 2 cents on that little part of the article. So again, Rodgers, I don't think he's tarnishing the team. I think he's doing what he, if you're using Ryan Grant's word, has been programmed to do, that as the years have gone on and he has been forced, and I mean forced, to literally put the team on his back, that's what he's going to continuously do. And if he thinks that a play is stupid, he's going to flat out say that, and he is going to change the call. And again, I'm not saying that's right, but I'm saying given the circumstances, I can at least understand. And so that question will arise again when we get Matt LaFleur, and if he's going to boss him around. And I would like to think that he's not going to. I would like to think that, but I don't know. I don't know how Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers are going to get along. I don't know if everything in this article is true and like he is purposely going around and like undercutting McCarthy and talking to receivers and telling them not to listen to McCarthy, like with the Equanimeous St. Brown thing. That's a bad look for Aaron Rodgers, and that needs to be called out. It's a bad look. So I'm hoping that if that is true, he changes, because that's not good for him, that's not good for the team, and it's not good for the fans. So that's my 2 cents on Aaron Rodgers. Mike McCarthy. Okay, first of all, there are a lot of good things about Mike McCarthy. And what I mean by that is go look at the Super Bowl teams, go look at him handling and taking bullet after bullet, whether it was the Brett Favre entire cluster freaking screw job that was him retiring and coming back and him giving the job to Aaron Rodgers, or the NFC Championship game, which admittedly a lot is his fault, but he has gone out in front of that press, and while he wasn't as aggressive as I would have liked, as he wasn't like angry as I would have liked, he took a lot of bullets from this team when Ted Thompson and Mark Murphy were not saying a thing. So before we all go and bash and bury Mike McCarthy in the ground, I think there's no way that you can acknowledge his influence on the team. There's a street named after him, and I think rightfully so, in Green Bay. But that being said, Mike McCarthy has been called out on this show and probably every other platform that involves a Green Bay Packer fan over the years. Stale play calling, lack of innovation, lack of accountability, right? All those things, 100% true. I would not have a shadow of a doubt that any of that stuff is true because I literally saw it on my TV screen every single week. And I know this is a defense kind of thing, but the fact that you would have, like, again, that Panthers game stands out to me. That Cam Newton's looking, he's like, oh, okay, I know a defense you're calling, calls an audible, and then gets a touchdown with Christian McCaffrey. It said in the article that the defense was literally able to say, like, oh, like, I know this play, so now I can go and jump the route because I know what it's going to be. And I think back in 2010 and 2011, right, you had so much talent on the team, especially on the defense in 2010. But you had so much talent in Greg Jennings, Donald Driver, Jordy Nelson, right? Eventually you're going to get Randall Cobb in some of the later years. You have all of this talent. And they even said in the article, like, the play calling wasn't anything special, but the talent just made that play calling look so much better than it actually was. So you could take a simple play like the slant route, which has gone away, and you could go and you could burn them every time because they were doubling Greg Jennings, and then you had Jordy Nelson, then you eventually had Randall Cobb, and then you had Donald Driver for a bit. You have all of these, you had John Kuhn, you had a running back, you had all of these things, right? And now, slowly, year after year after year, they're going away, and they're not being replaced. We're going into the draft and taking these rookies and saying, okay, we want you to be the next Nick Collins, or okay, you're going to go and replace Greg Jennings, or okay, you're going to go and replace Donald Driver. It's not realistic. And you're expected to say, okay, in 2011, we're going to call all of these plays, and then in 2012, when you have different players, we're going to call the same plays. That's not how football works. Football, you need to be innovative. Football, you need to come up with new plays because the personnel around those plays change. And so you need to change and adapt with it. That is something that Mike McCarthy didn't do. And so Rodgers had to do more. Again, not justifying it, but I could understand it. Now, there was also the whole thing about getting massages, that McCarthy was checked out on the team, that he basically abandoned the team, that he was giving assistants bigger roles, and they were like holding and leading the meetings right before games, and he was getting massages in his office while that was happening. Okay, John Kuhn, before I went live, he came out and said, I never was thrown under the bus by Aaron Rodgers, and I never heard of Mike McCarthy getting massages during meetings. So Mike McCarthy came out, and he really didn't respond to like any of the other article, but he said the massage thing. He goes, no, I've never missed a meeting because of massages. He says back in 2010 and 2011, I got massages because I was just worn down. I told a bunch of players that they should also do it as well because he was doing it. So I don't know if that's maybe where the rumor started, but I don't see Mike McCarthy, being the coach that he is, to literally be getting a massage while a meeting is going on. So that's my personal opinion, that I don't think that he gave up on this team. I think his lack of play calling and innovation and adaptation was more significant and was a greater reason why the Packers were failing over and over and over again. So obviously there was an interview, a sit down with Mike McCarthy from the other day in which he was shocked that he got fired. And by shocked, he said that, I thought change could be coming at the end of the year. He just didn't think it was going to happen after the Arizona game, that Mark Murphy was super cold towards him. It was kind of just like, we need a change and that's it, and you need to leave. And regardless of how you feel about Mike McCarthy, you can make arguments either way on whether that was the right thing because it saved him from 4 weeks of getting bombarded by media saying, you're going to lose your job. And at the same time, it's kind of like, all right, thanks for everything, pack your bags and leave. I think it's not the ending that anybody wanted. I think anybody can agree with that. But at the end of the day, I think McCarthy is a human being who didn't adapt to the NFL and didn't adapt to the changes that was going on within his team. And at the same time, you have Aaron Rodgers, who's also a human being who is being asked to do more and more with less. And so he's becoming more controlling while McCarthy's trying to regain or keep control of his own team. And you're having them butt heads. At the end of the day, both of these people are human beings. And at the end of the day, I think they're both at fault for what's going on in Green Bay. But they're not the only two who are at fault. And so the last thing that I'm going to mention here before we wrap this up, and I know this has already been way too long that I wanted it to be, Ted Thompson. Okay. I'm not going to talk about his drafting. I'm not going to talk about his free agency. I'm not going to talk about anything. There was something wrong with Ted Thompson. I don't know Ted Thompson. I'm not in the personnel office. I don't know what it is, but something was wrong with Ted Thompson. I think that was evident if you've been paying attention over these past few years that he, and again, I'm not saying this disrespectfully, and they say this in the article, that he's falling asleep, that he's slurring his words. Like, I think there is obviously medical issues that were going on with Ted Thompson, and because of that, he was absent as a GM. He was absent from this team. And you had sources saying, I don't know how Thompson didn't realize like this feud bubbling over between Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers. And I would respond, well, obviously he's dealing with a bunch of medical issues. And so at that point, that needs to be Mark Murphy's job to either get him help or remove him from the position earlier than 2017. So this is not going to be a bashing of Ted Thompson. You had a guy in which there was obviously some issues going on, and this allowed to fester over, and this allowed to get to the point where we're freaking reading almost a 10-page article about this because you had the so-called like commander-in-chief, our GM, not available. In addition, we had all of that talent that was bleeding out of the team that was never replaced. We mentioned that Ted Thompson was never a guy who was very aggressive in free agency, obviously very different from Brian Gutekunst, who's going out there and signing guys to fill these holes, because you can't just say, okay, we can go and plug rookies in. That's very optimistic, but that's not usually how the NFL works. So there's that. Mark Murphy starting to take control of his team a little bit more, right? Obviously very involved with the GM decision, very involved with the head coach position, and people criticized him for that. And the only thing I would criticize is that he should have done this sooner, especially in regards to what's going on with Aaron Rodgers and Mark Murphy, especially what's going on with Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy, etc. That these decisions that he made of removing Mike McCarthy, of removing Ted Thompson, should have been earlier, if anything. But again, Green Bay has a tendency to hold on to things a little bit too long, Dom Capers. Looking at kind of what's about to happen, you have a young coach coming in that is 4 years older than Aaron Rodgers. He is obviously going to shake things up. He's already alluded that he wants to run the ball more, while Aaron Rodgers has been known to check out of runs. So let's look at it this way. The most concerning piece of information that I got from this article wasn't about Mike McCarthy, and it wasn't about Aaron Rodgers, because at the end of the day, Mike McCarthy's no longer a part of the Green Bay Packers. He'll be always a part of the legacy, but he is not going to be there at the start of the 2019 season. So I would recommend for everybody, just move on. And we're done. Aaron Rodgers is obviously still a part and the focal point of this football team. And whether him and LaFleur are going to get along, that's anybody's guess. People are painting Aaron Rodgers that he's going to just barrel over LaFleur. And I really hope that's not the case. And if that is the case, then Aaron Rodgers is the problem. And to that point, reportedly in this article, Murphy calling Aaron Rodgers, who was not a part of the head coaching process and finding a new head coach, told Aaron Rodgers, don't be the problem. That is deeply concerning to me. Deeply. And so if there's any message that gets out of all of this, Mark Murphy needs to get his house in order. That needs to happen. This article should never have been necessary. This boiling up and festering should never have happened, because in this article, if you're picking sides of, oh, McCarthy was in the right or Rodgers is in the right, you're missing the point. Nobody wins in this article. Nobody's a winner. Not Rodgers, not McCarthy, sure as hell not the Packers, and sure as hell aren't the fans. That we now literally have to listen to this like overflowing of just diarrhea of the mouth and airing of grievances in an article that has multiple sources, and I really don't care that they're unnamed. Get over that if that's your thing. The fact that you could allow a head coach and a quarterback to have this much disrespect, I don't want to say hatred, but disliking for one another for so long really makes the organization look bad. And it's embarrassing. It's really, really embarrassing. And if you're calling your $200 million quarterback and saying, hey, we're about to hire this new guy, make sure you're not the problem, that makes it seem like they are just throwing darts at a dartboard and saying, okay, well, we can't get rid of Aaron Rodgers, so hopefully Mike McCarthy was the actual problem. And I think it's a mix of both. I think the relationship, obviously between the coach and the QB was the problem, but I think McCarthy was in the wrong, and also Rodgers is in the wrong. And Rodgers, being an adult, needs to grow and move past that and be coached. And if he can't, then that's a significant problem that needs to be addressed. And I'm not saying, like, oh my God, like, Tom is saying cut Aaron Rodgers, but what I'm saying is you can't have a QB that's not willing to be coached, no matter how good they are, because at the end of the day, in a few years, whether it's 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 10 years, Aaron Rodgers is not going to be on the Green Bay Packers. He's not going to. And it's not only not fair for Aaron Rodgers, more so, it's not fair for the football team for him to want to be in control of everything. And if he felt that he needed to act that way, and I completely understand that, under Mike McCarthy, I get that. But now that time is over. Mike McCarthy's no longer with the Green Bay Packers. So now you, Matt LaFleur, all the new coaching staff, you need to sit in a goddamn circle, you need to sing Kumbaya, and you need to get the hell along, and you need to go out and you need to win football games. That's what needs to be said at the end of this article. That's what needs to be the takeaway from fans. The success of the Green Bay Packers has been way too contingent on Aaron Rodgers for far too long. Hopefully Matt LaFleur comes in and the new coaching staff comes in and they change that. We have a new GM who's more aggressive in free agency. At the end of the day, we all want to win football games. The fans want that. The Packers want that. Aaron Rodgers wants that. The whole coaching staff and all the players on the team want to win football games, and they want to go and win championships. So what I'm going to tell you for the very last time, Mike McCarthy is gone. That's it. I wish him nothing but the best. I hope he becomes an amazingly successful coach somewhere else. Aaron Rodgers is still on the team. The guy could be an egotistical maniac, and he could have done all these terrible things over the past few years, and he could have froze guys out, and he could have been disrespectful to the coach. Fine. But it's 2019. It's a new season. It's a new regime. So let's just move the hell on. And if Aaron Rodgers can't, then you fix that problem. That's it. End of story. So right at this moment, I don't care about the past. I don't care that we should have won more Super Bowl rings, that we should have been in more Super Bowls, that we should have done this, that, and the other thing. That's in the past. We can't dwell on the past. We need to move forward, and hopefully we can get Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers a whole lot more championships. That's it. That's all I'm going to say about it. This was way too long, but that is how I feel, and that's how I feel about this article, and I don't want to talk about it anymore. All I want is to win some freaking football games. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. You can always find me at TomGrossiComedy.com or at Tom Grossi Comedy on all the social media you see below. Check out Podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, and of course here on YouTube. I appreciate you sticking in there. I appreciate this late Thursday night rant. And if you're a Packers fan and you're concerned about this team, it's not going to help. You being concerned about this football team is not going to change whether they succeed or whether they lose. What we can do as fans, and all we can do as fans, is hope. That's it. And enjoy the games and enjoy the ride. We have arguably the greatest quarterback in the NFL right now. Let's watch him play. But if that greatest quarterback is the problem, then we need to address it. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.